Welcome to another podcast episode with me, Portee. I hope that you're well and having a good week. And today's podcast episode is with Dr. Lauren Hartman. And it's still Women's Month, March. And I wanted to speak with an inspiring woman who is focusing and whose career is focused on body image and healthy eating patterns and eating disorders, and that is Dr. Hartman. And she was a joy to speak with. She's based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and she has dedicated her medical career to this topic. A little bit about Dr. Hartman. Um, She's dedicated her career to supporting teens and young adults with adolescent medicine and pediatrics, both of which she is double board certified in. With more than a decade of dedicated practice, Dr. Hartman has honed her skills in the specialized field of adolescent medicine, particularly in the realm of eating disorders in the hospital, outpatient, and virtual settings. Her leadership includes being chair of adolescent medicine at Kaiser Permanente for Northern California, the director of pediatric eating disorder program in the East Bay, and she has served as the West Coast medical director at Equip. In this podcast episode, we talk about how she counsels young adults, adolescents with eating disorders, and her thoughts on how parents can better support their children when they have eating disorders and body image views of themselves. She actually just published a book, which she talks about as well, where this book is really just that. It helps clinicians and parents and schools on how to speak with and help young adults with body image views of themselves. And we talk about GLP-1, something that's quite the craze at the moment. And I pick her brain with that. So enjoy this podcast episode. I hope that you find it inspiring for your life. I hope that it answers questions and gives you insight on some fascinating things. And you can find Dr. Hartman's website and email below. So enjoy this conversation. So, Lauren, thank you so much for joining my podcast.
Thank you for having me, Allie. I'm excited to be here. I'm glad this worked out.
Yes, and I think this is what you do is fascinating, and I think it's an important topic, especially for people that struggle with body image and eating disorders. And March is Women's History Month, and I think, there's pressure on all people, men or women, but specifically like looking at women, I wanted just to pick your brain about your thoughts on women struggling with eating disorders and disordered body image. But before diving into those questions, I'm just curious, what inspired you to take a career in this area?
It's such a good question. As so many things in life, I think there are many, many stories that kind of came together in my history, in my past that led me to doing this kind of work. For one, I will say that my cousin struggled for a long time with an eating disorder. And I saw the ways in which that just devastated her adolescence and her family's life. I mean, they really had to put everything on hold. And it is such a devastation for an entire family. It's not just the person who's struggling with it, it's the siblings um and the parents, of course, and those around that person who loves them. And so, I certainly saw that. And then I saw that there was somebody in her life who was an adolescent medicine specialist, which is what I do, who really helped ground the family, kind of acted like a quarterback and helped them navigate a really confusing, complicated picture. And
I
so
see.
adolescent medicine is my specialty. It is not a very well-known specialty. Most people are like, "What do you do?" Because there's really only 3 age-based medical specialties. So there's, neonatology for babies and gerontology for older adults, but adolescent medicine kind of covers, preteens and teens and young adults. And given that that is a time in someone's life where there's so many changes that are happening, biological changes, but social changes and psychological changes, it really deserves its own specialty. And so that is the area that I've just really loved. I love working with young people and their families. And I will say that when I first started training, and when I saw my cousin go through this, I felt just like almost like a hopelessness around eating disorders. It just felt like, oh, this is this terrible thing that can happen to people. And now I've really shifted in the way in which I see it. I have so much hope. I see people get better every day. I see the way families can really rally around young people. I see the way parents can help filter out those weight-centric messages that we're all swimming in. And so, I just see this like beautiful opportunity for ways in which we can support people to get well. So, um, it's a long answer to your question, but it's really just been such an honor to do this work and something that I've really, just continued to love.
How would you describe to a 5-year-old what it is that you do? Say there's a 16, 17-year-old out there thinking, what am I going to do with my life? I love biology. I love the idea of medicine. How would you describe practically what you do on a day to day?
I love that question. So, what I would say to a 5-year-old listening, first of all, this is the best kept secret in medicine because young people, adolescents in particular, are actually organically the healthiest age group that we have. However, they have a lot of morbidity and mortality that happens to them, that's actually often behavioral based and therefore preventable and modifiable. So, I would say the most important part of my job is to listen, really to help to build trust with young people and with their families that I am there for them. I am not there with my own goals. I'm there to listen to what their goals are and to help steer a healthy path towards that. Um, I'm often the glue between many other medical specialties. So, I'm often straddling the care between them and their therapist, or them and their dietitian, or them and their gynecologist or psychiatrist. I'm figuring out if they can get care in an outpatient setting or if they need to be in a hospital, so I'm really helping to. I say to young people all the time, I just want you to get back to your goals. I don't want you to need to see me. I want you to be out in the world doing everything that you love. And so let's figure out how to get there.
Gotcha. How would you describe eating disorder? If I had to describe it, it's someone who has anorexia or bulimia, but I'm sure there's a more thorough definition.
Yeah, well, and I will say, I think when people hear eating disorder, they do kind of jump to thinking about anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa. Um, and the truth is, there's many, many other types of eating disorders. There's something called binge eating disorder. There's something called ARFID, or avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. There's anorexia nervosa, as we mentioned, bulimia nervosa. So there's many different kinds of eating disorders. Anorexia nervosa is probably the most commonly thought of disorder when we think about diseases. And with anorexia nervosa, there is a real fear of weight gain. There is also a weight loss. So there's been restrictive eating habits that have resulted in significant weight loss. We used to have part of the diagnostic criteria being around losing a period. However, we know that eating disorders affect all genders, and so that has been erased from the diagnostic criteria. And what I usually try to let people understand and hear and know is that it is not so important that they are ensuring that they're checking off every box to say, do I have it or do I not have it? When food and eating is taking over your life, when it is leaving you feeling depleted and leaving you feeling stressed and leaving you feeling worried all the time, that's enough to be concerned and that's enough to get help. You don't have to wait until um, you feel terrible or you've lost a certain amount of weight. We've really tried to broaden the diagnostic criteria so that people can just get help. Like, you don't need to be running on fumes. You don't need to be feeling fearful all the time. You don't need to be counting your calories or thinking about your body all the time. There's help for that. And so really trying to support people as early as possible when they're starting to have any of these thoughts.
For sure. I would say, like, in our Western culture, the pressure is on everyone, men and women, to look a certain way. Um, Particularly for women, how do you counsel women in healthy ways of thinking about food and body image?
It's such an important question. And, I think one of the things that I really try to talk to people about is to ask themselves deeply, truly, like in their quiet space, like, how do I want to feel? Because, I think to your point, we have so many pressures. There's all these external pressures of, I should look a certain way, or my body should be this certain size, or I should weigh a certain number on a scale. And how do I want to feel? Because what I see all the time is people coming to me who have really set out initially with well-intended changes of, like, I want to get healthier and maybe I should cut out this and maybe I should do this and maybe I should stop eating that. And then they've lost weight. And then they have no energy to engage in the things that they love. And their hair's falling out and they're dizzy all the time. And they don't have the energy to really engage in the things that they love. And they'll often say to me, like, what the heck? Like, I thought I was going to be enjoying life, and they don't even want to engage. Like, they just want to be left alone because they're running on fumes and they don't have any energy. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think it's really like wanting to redefine how you want to feel and what is true health. That, to be um, well rested, to be able to have the fuel and the energy to engage in the activities that you love, to have the physical stamina to do the things that are really enjoyable. And that is not defined by a number on a scale, and that is not defined by a body size.
Yeah.
And I will also say, Allie, just to name it, is that I have unearned thin privilege, and I have never had to navigate the world in a larger body and facing weight discrimination every day. And so I have really listened and really tried to hear the stories of my patients of what they have to go through when they are facing weight stigma and weight discrimination and feeling like they can't fit in certain chairs or certain settings, and that they are getting um looks or comments, and that, I don't know what that's like. I know the health harms of that, and I just want to help partner with people to feel as well as they can. And I also think we have a real system problem that we need to continue to push against. I have a book coming out, or a book came out actually last week, and called Freeing Children and Young Adults from Shame, Scales, and Stigma. And the foreword of the book is written by a um, woman. Her name is Virgie Tovar, and she's in a larger body, and she has faced weight discrimination for all of her life. She's a activist and a writer and a real expert in weight discrimination. And I heard her say one time that weight discrimination is the only socially acceptable form of discrimination. And I think that is so true. And it is, I think, as physicians and as those in the healthcare space, we really have an opportunity to shift that and to make every environment be inclusive for every body of every size. And we have a lot of work to do.
Yes, for sure. Like, and I feel that often parents can be some of the maybe unknowingly, some probably are doing it knowingly, but the worst lack of supporters for their children who aren't thin, or what society considers from the fashion industry of what, an American or a Westerner should look like. And in my own family, like my paternal grandmother was a curvy woman. So a few of her daughters got that shape, and I got that shape. I didn't get her husband's shape, my grandfather, but it created in the family this, I feel, unhealthy view that from my grandfather's standard that women should be thin. So he and his sons, my father being one, had this view, and it can be particularly damaging to a young girl, where me and my cousins would get these comments, or our fathers poking at our stomachs, or oh, your thighs are rubbing together. And these are particularly damaging for whether you're 5 or 20 years old, to be hearing this from a father, and it begins to plague you as a young girl. Oh, my weight. And then as you're growing up in school, are you being asked to the school dance? And oh, I'm not being asked, you feel because of your curvy shape. And it can just be something hard to navigate if you have a curvy body. um and I found that quite a challenge growing up. And I think those thoughts can still plague you as an adult. Any advice to that voice that you may continue hearing as an adult, that you've wrestled with your whole life?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that really thoughtful and vulnerable question. I really appreciate that. You know, one of the things I have to say first is that, I think it is so easy for all of us to just feel a lot of kind of resentment towards those environments that created that. And, I've really tried to help um appreciate the compassion that we have to have for the generations before us and for ourselves, because we are all swimming in diet culture. There is just like that is what is being consumed. And so I do think almost every single parent I've ever met in my career, I know is doing their best to try to keep their child safe. And so I think often what has happened is parents are worried about the fat phobic world. And so that they think that, oh, maybe if I poke or maybe if I tease, maybe that's going to be a useful message to shift my kid's behavior or to shift their body and make them somehow safer in this world. And the truth is that we know that does not work and that is not a helpful message. First of all, we have a systems problem, as I mentioned. We really have to shift the system to be inclusive and accepting of every body type. We have to help people understand that weight and health are not the same, that they are decoupled, and that being in a smaller body doesn't mean that you're going to be a healthier person. And so, we really have to, and it's not pathology, it's just diversity. There's diversity of body sizes. So I think the first thing is we just have to do our job in terms of education for those that came before us, but also for us, so that we're passing along a different message and that we don't have to pass along that legacy. Um, I think for the person who is just carrying that message is, really trying to appreciate the ways in which they have all these qualities that have absolutely nothing to do with their body size. It is just so irrelevant. And again, I know it's easy for me to say in a smaller body, but I'm just thinking as you were asking this question, I'm thinking about something that I saw literally last night on Instagram, and I was like, that is it. That is it. It said, what kind of brainwashing did we all have to go through to be focusing on this? And it showed like, the arms, the stomach, and someone poking at their own body parts and the ways in which that they, the parts of their body that they hate, to focus on that and not this. And then it showed nature. It showed all the beautiful elements of nature. And like, gosh, if we can just look up and look out and appreciate the beauty around us instead of picking on ourselves, it's just a much easier way to go about the world. And I think there's probably no easy way through it except the reps, really appreciating like, okay, what does it look like when I just eat for nourishment and I
Mm,
eat for joy and I eat for connection and I don't eat and pick on myself about it. And
mm.
I move for joy and I move for my own energy and I don't move because I have to. I don't move because I ate something, I'm just practicing kindness and compassion to myself because everybody deserves to eat a variety of foods and enjoy it and to move their body in a way that feels fun and exciting and not trying to fit into some standard that is make believe and meant to keep
Yeah.
us small.
Indeed. And I think, being a fashion journalist, I see, and you hear the stories of models who, maybe they don't have the same story as someone in a larger body, but they also struggle. Thin women also struggle with body image, and
Yes.
models eating, soaking cotton balls in milk and sprinkling a little sugar on it just to, I guess it's like empty calories of not to gain weight, but that can't be good for the digestive system to eat milk-soaked cotton balls. But these are the things that they go through and drinking laxative tea several times a day or week. It's um I guess maybe the media industry has a lot to of the image of what we see and think about body image, unhealthy views of it, but women of all shapes and sizes, and men as well, are dealing with these things.
Absolutely. And like, what a prison, what a way to live. And, I will say, this weekend, I got a text on my phone that said, oh, you can press this button and get 3 months of a GLP-1, a weight loss medication. And I thought to myself, wow, like this is the coming together of capitalism and weight stigma, that this is being pushed on us so aggressively. We don't see this with any other medication. We don't see this with blood pressure medication. We don't see this with cholesterol medication. We really can't say this is about health. This
Mhm.
is about weight stigma and discrimination. And it is just not okay. And I really feel a privilege that I get to work with young people because I see how much more open they are than us as adults who've just gotten kind of rigid of like, this is the way it has to be. This is the way it's been. And young people are like, yeah, I don't think so.
Mhm.
I don't think that that is really okay. And so I do have hope that this can shift. And I, really wrote this book because I wanted to free this next generation from feeling so stuck in the shoulds and to instead feel just a freedom to be who they are in the body that they have and to learn to love it and to learn to trust it and listen to it. And but to your point, we have work to do in every industry. It's not just fashion. Certainly medicine has a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question about your book, but before getting to that, you brought up GLP-1s. Why do you think women are flocking to this kind of drug for rapid weight loss?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is the rapid. I think a lot of people um, appreciate a quick fix. I think we all sort of are like, let's just fix it. Like we're so impatient. So I think that's probably a big part of it is like, oh, can I get something fixed that I don't like quickly? Good. Um, I think especially when I think about young people, because these medications are being prescribed really rapidly to young people too. So it's not just adults. I just really want us to exercise caution, especially for young people who are supposed to be growing and are supposed to be gaining weight and developing, and their bones and their muscles are developing. And we just don't have data about the impact that that's going to have on their growing body and developing body. And young
Because don't
people are,
GLP-1s affect our muscles? Like I heard that a lot of people are getting osteoporosis as a
yes.
result of it.
Yes, yes, yes. So we know that from adult data. So
Oh.
so we see osteoporosis in adults. We see this, especially the hip and the spine getting impacted. We see it even more significant when the weight loss is rapid. But what's additionally concerning is that young people, this is when you're supposed to be gaining 60% of your bone density. And
Mhm.
so it's a critical window and you don't get another chance for it. So, if people are not building their initial bone structure and bone density at this time and architecture, and they're just losing bone muscle, the devastation of that could just be more severe. And to your point, the muscle. So what we know is 20% of the weight loss that happens with GLP-1s is actually muscle loss, not fat.
Mhm.
And so, but that's adult data. So we don't know what that looks like for young kids, especially for people who are assigned male, is that they are during puberty, you're gaining so much of your lean muscle. And so like what that can do for boys, but for all genders, is certainly concerning.
For sure. Okay, to your book. What inspired you to write it? I know that you were just talking a little bit about it, but who should be reading this book?
Thanks for that question, Allie. I will say I never intended to write a book. It was not a goal. It was not on a vision board. I am a doctor. I love being a doctor. I feel very honored to get to do the work that I do. And I was just sitting in my office and hearing story after story after story from young people about who are coming to me with an eating disorder. And when I would say what happened, or tell me a little bit about how this all began, there were many common threads and many common themes about either what was said in the doctor's office to them, like you need to lose weight,
Mhm.
or what they learned in health class at school about sugar being bad, or what was happened to them in their PE class, or what was said at home. And I know the adults in their lives are incredibly well intended. And I also know that these are vulnerable ears that are hearing these messages. So I just really felt a need to help arm parents and doctors and schools with new language and tips and scripts and strategies. It's very practical of like, how do I have these conversations with young people? What do I say when they ask me these questions? What do I do when grandma comes over and grandma pokes at their belly? Like, what do I do? So I really just wanted to help it. I would say parents are probably the biggest audience because they are the biggest advocates for kids. And I think when parents are like, again, it's not to be shaming or blaming or pointing a finger, but for parents, we know that kids really want parents to filter out the weight centric messages of the society. So I know that parents, if they feel that they are armed with a tool that they can then point it out at the school and point it out with the doctor of like, you know what, the way in which you talked to my kid last time, that wasn't helpful, and help their kids learn better. So it's actually divided into 3 sections for 3 audiences. So people can just like have it be very user friendly.
Mhm.
But so far I'm hearing a lot from clinicians and a lot from parents who are already really appreciating some of the resources in it.
That's good. It sounds like it's a book that was needed 20 plus years ago, but hopefully we get better with each generation and your book will be a practical resource for everyone on how to understand and communicate out on these
I
issues.
really hope so. That's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for your quick thoughts on these topics. It's such a deep issue that can't be conversed in one sitting, but it's good to have these conversations.
Thank you so much. As you can tell, I feel very passionate about it.
Yes.
I feel we owe it to our young people and owe it to the next generation to try to shift, do our best to try to shift and repair where we've gotten it wrong. So thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode and that you have found a soulful connection to the conversation. God bless you, and until the next episode, go bless somebody else.